Welcome to the Combat Cast. Chevy, the man called Dave. UFC 294 is this weekend. Chevy, before we get into the main card, any fights you want to profile?
Yeah, on the prelims, Trevor Peek is fighting Muhammad Yahya. I don't know who Muhammad Yahya is, but I do know who Trevor Peek is. I think he has all finishes in the UFC. He has terrible technique, but he's just a true dog in there. So fun guy to watch for sure. So keep an eye out for him. And then featured bout on the prelims, Tim Elliott versus Mohamed Makhachev. Excellent matchmaking in the flyweight division. So we're looking forward to that one. Let's get into the co-main and main event here. Also, before the co-main, Johnny Walker getting a shot against Ankalaev for light heavyweight title eliminator probably. So we don't need to go through that, but good luck to Johnny Walker, I guess.
I'm picking, what fight was that there? Johnny Walker and what? Ankalaev. Yeah, I got Ankalaev all day. This guy he's virtually undefeated, all right? I say this all the time whenever we preview this guy. He's got one loss to Paul Craig. 1 second of the final round, a 3-round fight. He gets submitted. He gets caught in a fight that he was winning. All right. His only other fight that he has, not even a blemish, is a draw. His most recent fight to Blachowicz, and a fight where they interviewed Blachowicz afterwards, where Blachowicz felt like he didn't win the fight. So I think Walker's got the power. He can always catch somebody. He's got that puncher's chance, but you got to favor Magomed here.
Yeah, for sure. Smart money's on Ankalaev, but Johnny Walker's been winning fights that he shouldn't be winning lately. Been fighting a little bit smarter, more controlled. So I'm rooting for him. If the fight gets to the ground, he's screwed, but he can knock anyone in the world out. So I'm rooting for him for sure.
Nurmagomedov.
Yeah, that one. I gotta go with Nurmagomedov for sure. He's a monster for sure. He's kind of flying under the radar for the most part. I don't know too much about Murin.
Neither guy has ever been finished.
Yeah,
I was that today, and all the losses they do have, they've never been finished. So Nurmagomedov, though, more experience, 6-2 in the UFC, more experience with quality competition. I look for him to get the win. And then the second fight here, you got
Ikram Aliskerov versus Warley Alves. That should be a fun fight too, actually.
Yeah. So Ikram, he's 14-1, 5 KOs, 5 subs, 4 decisions. His only loss is early in his career to Khamzat Chimaev.
Yeah.
So I'm looking for Ikram to pull this off here. He's already 1-0 in the UFC, so the initial jitters you think he would have, he's already got that win. I think he'll beat Warley here too.
Warley been on tough times too, I think. He's lost a lot recently. So
he's lost 2 in a row and 3 out of his last 4. There's a quick synopsis of the rest of the card. Let's get to main event.
All right, our pieced together co-main and main event after fallings out. Shout out to the UFC also before we get into this for being able to save this, putting this together. Almost more excited for these fights. Arguably. So Kamaru Usman versus Khamzat Chimaev.
Okay, one thing too, I think this has been called a title eliminator possibly for middleweight now. It's very strange considering both these guys have been primarily fighting at welterweight. This is Usman's debut at middleweight rather. So very strange, but they are both big names. And on a technical level, it's going to be hard to argue that these aren't going to be 2 of the best in the world. Like Chimaev has already fought at middleweight a couple times. And if Usman can beat Chimaev, then he's probably going to be a problem in this division. That being said, Khamzat Chimaev, 12-0, 6 KOs, 5 subs, 1 decision. His 1 decision win is over Gilbert Burns. That was the toughest fight he's had so far. I think that's interesting to note because that's the last fight he really had at welterweight, in the sense he did fight Kevin Holland, but that ended up being a catchweight where he completely missed weight for that fight.
8 pounds, yeah.
So I do kind of wonder if Chimaev was, at that point with Burns, was already seeing kind of the end of his welterweight days. But nonetheless, his wins over Leach, Gerald Meerschaert, Gilbert Burns, Kevin Holland, I mean, it's quite an impressive resume already for so early in his career. Usman, though, 20-3, 9 KOs, 1 submission, 10 decision wins. Coming off his first 2 losses in his row, he lost his title in a fight that he was winning by a head kick, and then lost a very close fight by decision in the rematch, Leon, as the challenger. And, Usman has been the man mostly at welterweight. You could even make a case that Usman is right there under GSP, I think, as the greatest welterweight of all time, for sure.
There's an argument for sure, yeah.
Absolutely. This is the makings of a great fight because Khamzat Chimaev, what he's dangerous at is striking and wrestling. He's really good, but usually if you're a good striker, he has the ability just to take people down. He might not have that here with Usman. Usman's got great wrestling pedigree. He's not sucking weight this time. He's going to be a bigger version of himself. So we'll see how that plays into that. And as we've seen at welterweight, when Usman fought another guy who deleted the wrestling advantage with Kobe, we had some of the best fights ever as far as most exciting. So I think it's an interesting matchup. I'm going to favor Chimaev here just because we've seen him fight at this weight class a little bit, and that experience might play the factor, I think. But I think this is a pick 'em because there's really too many X factors. How Usman looks here at middleweight is going to be a big deciding factor in this fight.
Yeah, I don't think people give Kamaru the respect that he deserves recently based off those 2 losses. I think people think that he's kind of washed, which, he is older at this point, but I think you're discrediting Leon Edwards when you look at it that way. He's a monster, and I think not cutting weight is going to be helpful for him, but he can't out wrestle or outstrike Khamzat. I don't think he's going to have the mentality edge on Khamzat. Khamzat's an absolute monster, so I'm having a hard time seeing exactly how he gets it done if he's going to win. I assume he's going to be smaller because Khamzat has known he's going to middleweight, so he's been putting that weight on, that muscle on, to cut down to 185. Kamaru has not been planning for that. So plus it's on short notice. Khamzat had a camp, Kamaru doesn't. So I think it's just too many things going against Kamaru. If this was, a full 8 or 10 week camp for both guys, I would agree with you. I'd say a pick 'em fight, but unfortunately it would be phenomenal if Kamaru won, but I think that Khamzat finishes him inside those 3 rounds. So I think maybe he hurts him and he jumps on something and gets a sub in round 3. But I hope I'm wrong. I hope Kamaru shocks everyone, shows us just how great he really is, but I'm going with Khamzat.
What's interesting about that is that your logic too about the short notice, I kind of forgot about with this fight, and I remembered it with our main event, which we'll talk about next, because it certainly becomes a factor again.
Yeah, Islam Makhachev versus Alexander Volkanovski 2.
That's right. Volkanovski, 26-2, 13 KOs, 3 subs, 10 decisions, featherweight champ. Only loss in UFC is to Islam. A very close fight.
Lost, quote unquote.
Right. Yeah. So it's arguable, as you can hear by my colleague here. So Islam Makhachev, though, 24-1. His only loss, he got caught in his second fight ever in the UFC. He's got 4 KOs, 11 subs, 9 decisions. He's won 12 in a row. He's 13-1. Ultimately, here we're talking about, and we saw it in their first fight, this is going to be a fight. If you want to see high-level MMA, whether it's wrestling, striking, submission attempts, you're going to probably get a little bit of everything here. Smart money would be on Islam for what Chevy talked about, I think, for the co-main event. Volkanovski's taking this on short notice. And when you start breaking it all down, these X factors all kind of factor in here. But here's one other X factor. I kind of thought, almost as we were talking about this, it's popped in my head. Volkanovski, even the first time he took this fight, he talked about how people said, "Oh, why go up? You could lose." And he's like, that's a horrible mentality. He's like, why wouldn't I go up? He's like, test myself. And this is a guy who constantly wants to prove himself, constantly wants to test himself. Took this fight on short notice. And as Dana White said, Islam too, there was no hesitation, either one of them. So they're both very strong. But Volkanovski's the one here whose back is against the wall, because even though it's short notice, if he loses this fight, he'll probably never get another shot at the lightweight title with Islam. And it'd probably be a long, long time before he would just get a shot at the lightweight title again even. So that being said, I think it's crazy, but I think something's going to motivate Volkanovski here. And I think he's going to get the job done. I'm going to say a late finish, round 4.
Bold claim. Yeah, I like that.
I know. I was going with Islam all day, but let's pick it.
Yeah, so as I alluded to earlier, I thought Volkanovski won the last fight with his great cardio at the end of the fight. Taking a short notice fight is never good for a guy that relies heavily on tiring out his opponents. That is how Volkanovski was getting the edge on Islam and later in the fight. So I think Volk needs to go in there and get an early finish if he's going to win. I think he alluded to that a little bit in a few interviews I've seen. So Makhachev knows this. So I assume he goes very wrestling heavy early on to try to wear on Volkanovski's gas tank because Volk has not had a camp and Islam has. I think they would be somewhere around even in cardio at this point. But, you know, I'd love to say that Volkanovski goes in there with this mentality, knowing what he needs to do and gets a TKO early in like round 2 or something like that. Smart money says Makhachev gets a easier decision win this time. So I think that's probably what's going to happen. But oh man, am I rooting for Volkanovski in this one?
He might be what he was to Max Holloway here, Islam, because we thought Max might have won the first fight kind of close. Volk got the decision, but then the second time, Volk did what he had to get the win, and now, given the circumstances like that, that might be what happens here with Islam.
Yeah,
we'll see. Either way, some of the greatest fighters in the world this weekend are going to fight high-level MMA, high-level combat sports.